So the first question, Richard, was, hi guys, would you say eating red meat increases growth of polyps in the colon?
No.
No.
In simple terms, no. I mean, there's a number of contributing factors, inflammation being a big one, but red meat, contrary to popular belief, is not a cause of any inflammation within the body. I was speaking with a friend of mine today who was talking to a friend of theirs who went to see their doctor about diabetes, for example, and they give them a list of compounds that they need to avoid to prevent inflammation, and red meat was one of them. And this is completely and utterly factually incorrect. Red meat does not cause inflammation. Processed foods can cause inflammation. Red meat, when it comes from natural sources and is grass-fed and is not contaminated full of all of these nasties, is not inflammatory in nature. Even many of the foods that we do consume that are processed still can confer a benefit compared to lots of other compounds that we eat on a day-to-day basis. But this is to do with inflammation. If we look at the inflammatory pathways, many of these that we know are induced by NLRP3 inflammasome, which the ketone body beta-hydroxybutyrate will block dead in its tracks. This comes from an increase in something called NFB, neurotrophic factor, kappa B, and then NLRP3 is downstream of this, but BHB will block this. So if there's any inflammation in the body, beta-hydroxybutyrate will block inflammation. Red meat allows us to become ketogenic. It's also very high in nutrients, carnitine being one, which is essential for the carnitine shuttle, which is an antioxidant. It's essential for redox balance and fights oxidative stress. And it's also important for the carnitine shuttle, which allows us to send fatty acids into the mitochondria so we can use it for energy through beta oxidation and ketone production. So red meat, no, it's not going to lead. If you have polyps, then they're more than likely caused by fruits and vegetables that you are consuming. Fruits and vegetables, contrary to popular belief, are not good for the colon. They're not good for the gut. Many of this comes from the premise that it contains short-chain fatty acids which feed the colonocyte, and it does do this. But in order to do this, it must bind to the colonocyte and break down into the short-chain fatty acid butyrate. But when we are ketogenic, we feed every colonocyte in the gut, not just the colonocyte that short-chain fatty acid comes into contact with. But guess what red meat contains? Red meat also contains isobutyrate, valerate, and propionate, which are other short-chain fatty acids which feed the colonocyte, arguably at a higher rate than the short-chain fatty acid from fruits and vegetables. So if you were suffering with polyps, then it's inflammatory. We need to remove the compounds that are causing this. This is typically fruits and veg. Red meat is not going to be a contributing factor to this, providing you are not adding in the stimuli which is causing that inflammation. We need to look at the root cause. Many of the things that we see, many of the studies are they are done on consuming other compounds. So, for example, if we eat a pizza, well, pizza contains red meat, or some pizzas may, and therefore this contributed further to this inflammatory condition. Therefore, all red meat is detrimental. Nobody looks at red meat in isolation. All of these studies are conflicted, and when we do look at the studies which are based purely on the animal proteins, they are anti-inflammatory. The ketone body beta-hydroxybutyrate is anti-inflammatory in nature. Vegetable oils, seed oils, which are found in processed foods, they are highly inflammatory. The omega-6 linoleic acid, when it becomes oxidized, and we can get into that as we go along. But red meat, no.
Excellent. And I'm just going to say to everybody that if you've joined late, don't worry, there's a playback. If you've joined the community, which you have because you're here, that's fantastic. Welcome along. There's always a playback, and we always have a transcript. You don't have to take notes. In the next couple of days, everything that we've said, if you want to repeat it to your friends, then you can, and you can download a PDF of the transcript. Absolutely fine. There's always playbacks. There's playbacks of other lives now. You can go back over a few weeks and look at the headings to what we talked about, and you can find out lots of information. That question, just for those that were late in, do we think that red meat increases the growth of colonic polyps? And of course, no. We do have a very good friend, Lee Copus, who has a colostomy bag, and I know hundreds of nurses that deal with the bags for people, and it's never got red meat in there. I mean, red meat does not even get into the colon. That's it. So, Miles, is it okay to ask a question in the chat? Absolutely. We are going to answer the questions we promised that we will answer from YouTube. But yes, please put your questions in the chat. And if we can do it in 30 minutes, we will. If we can't do it in 30 minutes, then what we'll do is we will try and answer it in the next live. Okay, so this is Elizabeth asking, I need to gain weight. Now, this is the interesting thing, you see. Many people worry about there's too much weight, there's not enough weight, they want to maintain their weight. It is about eating the right amount, getting to your intuitive way of eating, listening to your hunger signals and your satiety signals. So Elizabeth is saying, I need to gain weight. I've lost on carnivore. I'm down to 109 pounds and I'm 5'5" tall. How do I maintain weight that I now have on carnivore? Well, make sure you're eating enough. One of the things that people come to this way of eating with is the belief that they have to stick to calories, or they have to eat 3 meals a day, or whatever their belief is. If they want to keep fat off, then they've got to be in a calorie deficit. And that is all rubbish. It's all down to eating the appropriate amount that you need to eat and trying to get intuitive. Now, I do offer meal plans because I know for 5 years I've been banging on about being intuitive, and some people still need to have a bit of hand holding and they need to know the amounts or the weights or whatever. So I get all that. But eventually what will happen is you will find your homeostatic set point where it's good, where you're quite lean, you've got enough muscle and all that sort of things. So I think if you want to gain a little bit of healthy weight, then you could look at, like resistance training. You could look at that. You could increase your protein if you wanted to. If you're looking gaunt, if you feel like you need more body fat, and yes, we do need some body fat, it's healthy to have some, then you could increase your fat intake. So there's many different ways. If you're finding it difficult to eat enough and you're sticking to 2 meals a day, and this is what I was getting on about, if you've seen an influencer and 2 meals a day is the thing that you've got to do, and you can't eat enough, then do 3 meals a day, because it's your body, it's your experience, it's what you're seeing in the mirror, it's how you feel every day. As long as your sleep is okay, it doesn't affect your sleep, and you add 3 meals a day, then that seems like a good thing. You can add snacks instead of an extra meal. If an hour after eating your ribeye or whatever you've eaten and you feel a little bit hungry, you can make yourself an omelette. So don't live by the rules that have been put onto you by the mainstream. Just do what you think is the right for you. So, Richard, should we go on to the next one? Or do you feel you want to add something?
No, spot on. I just think, look, it's quite often the body's incredibly intuitive and it'll find a natural level of homeostasis. Several clients of mine are concerned because they're losing too much weight. The body's very clever. If you're losing that weight, then it can afford to be lost. And what happens is we tend to do this and then it bounces back naturally. But if you do want to gain the weight, then everything that Stephen has said is spot on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. But we will get to your question, okay? We give full and sort of very in-depth answers. We don't just say there's a video, go and have a look at that. We try to answer the actual question. So we will get to it, but we did promise these people. The general is asking 25% to 10% body fat. I think that's what they're saying they are and what they want to be. Assuming a person is resistance training, how and what kind of diet plan would you create for someone in this situation? Calories don't need to be included, but types of food do. Right, well, I'll say to the general, I do have free meal plans on the website, which are free. I'll give you an example of what I can do personalised. I think Richard also has recipes on his website, but I do have very specific carnivore ones. What kind of diet plan would I create? Well, actually, what I do, if you do the free one, it's basically what I think the average person wants. If you want a personalised one, then I've got an online form where you tell me the foods you like, the foods you don't like, because it is still about enjoying life. We don't want you to be looking fantastic and feeling miserable. There's no point in that. So you answer the questions, and then we design a meal plan on your target weight and your body fat. It really is that simple. Really, really, honestly. And I hold your hand for about 4 weeks, and then I know what I'm doing now. Wow, that was so simple. It was food I like and just the right amount. And that's it. It really is it. And there are certain types of food that may not be helpful. Some people gain weight with a bit of dairy. They put too much dairy in. So that's what I would say. So next question, Richard. Are PUFAs in chicken, eggs and pork harmful? Their fat is similar to seed oils nowadays. And that's Carsten.
So, look, when we look at omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, yes, chicken is going to be higher in omega-6, but we also need to understand that these things are only a problem if they become oxidized. Omega-3s, when they're oxidized, cause problems. So even we blame linoleic acid, but if we consume omega-3s, which have gone bad, should we say, and become oxidized, and they can cause the same issues as linoleic acid. So we see this in pork also. Pork contains roughly 20 times, I think, higher linoleic acid compared to beef. But some people function really well off pork. I think it's very much a case of whether they're oxidized or not. Now, that said, I do find that too much chicken doesn't work well for me. Now, I'm highly sensitive to linoleic acid. If I eat out, the first thing I tell them is that I have an allergy to seed oils. Could they grill or dry fry my food or cook in butter? If I'm having eggs, then I'll ask them to be oh my goodness, what's the one in water, Steve?
Poached.
Poached. I always forget poached. All of these big words we come up with, and I can never
remember poached.
So poached eggs, for example. But sometimes they will say that they're not using these compounds to cook in. I know within seconds if they have used them because I have an instant reaction in my stomach. If I consume too much chicken, I have this reaction if I consume chicken 2 days on the trot, for example. So even though we know that if they're not oxidized, we shouldn't be worrying or concerned too much. But always listen to your body. For me, chicken once a week is more than enough. Pork once a week is more than enough. If you are concerned, then try to avoid. The best sources are always going to be grass-fed beef and lamb. And Stephen and I have mentioned a number of times that there is an argument there that grass-fed lamb may even be more beneficial than grass-fed beef for a number of reasons. If you are concerned, just avoid it or eat it, as and when you need to. For example, if you're having a Sunday dinner with your family and you want to be part of it and you can eat the chicken and none of the veg. So it does have its place, but whether we should be concerned is very much an individual thing, I think. And it's just listen to your body.
Yeah, and I think it's going to bore people us saying listen to your body eventually, but that is it, in essence, listening to your hunger and satiety signals. Next question, Mona is saying, explain the triglycerides going down with carnivore, down 100 pounds in 15 months. Mona, if you are listening to the playback or you've joined, please contact me and we'll do a success story. But what's happened? How have you reduced your triglycerides? Well, the biggest one is reducing carbohydrates, because the sugars, the starches, the refined carbs, they all contribute to triglyceride levels because your liver will convert them all, well, not all, but a lot of them into triglycerides. So you will get lower triglycerides. You might find that you are increasing your fish. So you increase your omega-3 fatty acid intakes. And that can make your body go, right, well, we don't need so many triglycerides. You could also have what we call healthy user bias. If you are now thinking about your health, you might have cut out some alcohol. And if you cut out the alcohol, that's going to reduce your triglyceride levels. So that's a pretty good question. And I think, Elizabeth, the last question from YouTube. I'm 78 years old. I've been on carnivore for 3 months. I've lost and I'm down to 109 pounds and need to maintain because I am thin. How do I do that on carnivore? And I think, Elizabeth, that was a similar question earlier. So hopefully you heard that. Just eat enough. Just make sure you're eating enough of the right things and you should be fine. So the great news, Richard, is we're now on questions in the room. Actual people. Actual real people. So Bert has put, How would high triglycerides be a problem? I am about 2 years on a beef, occasionally eggs, rarely bacon, very rarely cheese, once a month, and still on coffee with heavy whipping cream. And triglycerides are high at 1.8. HDL is 1.3. LDL is 5.2. Total cholesterol is 7.4. Lymphocytes, 48.8%. Lab taken about 13 to 14 hours after the last meal. Any ideas?
So, I mean, let's look at that at the moment. I mean, it's the triglyceride to HDL ratio is around 1.4, which is anything below 1.5, depending on who you speak to, is recognized as being a healthy range. The lower it is, the better that we look at this. But triglycerides are essential for life also. I think we demonize these compounds. We use these in the body. They're essential for many processes within the body. If, Bert, you feel fit and healthy, and fantastic. Again, and Stephen's mentioned this many times, we look at the data and we think, oh, these numbers are not right. I've got a problem. If you were thriving and you feel incredible, then it doesn't matter so much. And one of the things that I would say that happens with triglycerides is that the body will store this for energy to use at a later date, which might allude to maybe overconsumption of certain fats. Now, the heavy whipping cream is one that could be contributing to this. And I'm not saying this is bad by any means, but it's very easy to overconsume on double cream or heavy whipping cream in regards to the fat content. That little bit in the coffee every day can add up. So it may be a case that if you took that out, you may see a drop. But again, does it matter? I don't think that you're at risk of cardiovascular disease. And in fact, I mean, if we look at LDL 5.2 total triglycerides, look, the HDL is still high. I mean, that's still an incredible profile. LDL heals and repairs the body. People look and demonize LDL. LDL is the particle that is released by the liver, and its job is to travel through the body, dropping off lipid cargo to heal and repair the body. As you guys probably already know, you've heard me mention this a million times, but this can't be damaging. This is the body healing and repairing. This is essential for life. It only becomes a problem when the particles become damaged and the ApoB100 receptor becomes glycated or oxidized. Glycated through excessive sugar consumption and oxidized through omega-6s, vegetable oils, seed oils. You're not living that lifestyle. I would not be concerned with that profile at all. And there are far worse things to be consuming than heavy whipping cream. If that's your go-to in a coffee now and again, then I'm not concerned. I wouldn't be concerned with that whatsoever.
No, I wouldn't be concerned at that. 159 milligrams per deciliter is that in the American, if people are listening, they want to know what that means. You can always biohack this. Don't forget, I did private blood testing for over a decade. And if you were, for instance, and I'm not suggesting you would do this, you're trying to get a better insurance premium, you could, as Bert has alluded to, he doesn't eat much fish. So you could include fish for about 3 or 4 days, which will put your omega-3s up and it'll bring your triglycerides down a little bit. Simple as that. Now, what does that tell us the body is doing? It's going, right, triglycerides, these are a great source of energy, really good source of energy, which we're getting from eggs, bacon, rarely cheese and all that sort of stuff. But, that's gone down, but we've got the energy from fish now. We've got these omega-3s. We can use these. It really is that simple. There's zero in that panel of bloods there that would worry me as phlebotomist, knowing it in the context of this way of eating. The other thing is the word high. It actually isn't technically high. It's borderline high, but it isn't high. And then I always say, who says it's high? Now, I'm going to give you a real example of somebody that was worried about their TSH level because their doctor said it's subclinical. And it's a nice little analogy to think about, or a little thought experiment, I should say. That's probably a better thing. So anyway, he was able to give me 4 years of data. And he was able to give me his TSH readings, which were subclinical, should have been 0.4 to 4, and his was something like 0.3. So yeah, subclinical just means it's lower than the alleged normal, not optimal range. Okay. And then we looked at T4, and his T4 slap bang in the middle of the range every single year, 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24. And I said to him, now imagine you were the first person that ever came to have a blood test, and we were looking at thyroid, and we looked at your T4 production, which is what TSH is actually trying to do, is trying to make your thyroid wake up and do stuff, make some T4. Right. Yours is perfect. Every single year, your T4 is perfect. If you were the first person having bloods, I would be able to say your TSH levels must be perfect because it's giving me the perfect result. So this is how I want people to start thinking. Who's saying it's high and what are they basing it on? You know, results are important, which is why I go on and bore people with what's your clinical presentation? How do you feel? You feel good? Why are the numbers telling you there's something wrong when your body is telling you everything's right? And we have to understand that those normative ranges are based on the average person who isn't optimal and is probably eating 6% carbohydrates. And would you want to be like them? So, yeah, that's it. So just food for thought. Miles on his iPhone is asking, everyone on carnivore is amazing. Everything on carnivore is amazing for me at the moment. Feel great, lost fat, building muscle, go to the gym Monday to Friday mornings, do resistance training. Would you recommend eating protein and fat straight after the gym, or is it okay to wait until 6 p.m. and then have one large meal? Thanks.
Yeah, I think, look, there's nothing wrong with consuming food straight from training, but it's not optimal. Training itself will elicit an mTOR response, which means that's an anabolic response which signals the body to heal and repair and grow. And that's mTOR complex 1. If you were to consume food, then you were not benefiting solely or adequately from that mTOR response, because if you were to eat that food later, this would also elicit an mTOR response. So if we were to wait 3.5 to 4 hours after, we can elicit another mTOR response. Now, the best way that we can build muscle and benefit from the gym is applying something called the mTOR reset. The mTOR reset takes 3.5 to 4 hours. So the thinking behind it is, if we train and elicit an mTOR response, which is outside of IGF-1, by the way, so much of the mTOR responses and the negativity that we see in the media is to do with this activation via IGF-1. So there are a number of ways that we can activate mTOR. We do it directly through leucine. So when we consume leucine, we activate mTOR. When we train, we activate mTOR. If we consume carbs, we can activate mTOR. But we want to do this without the carbohydrate. If you were to train, we've activated mTOR, fantastic. Wait 3.5 to 4 hours, then consume your meal, and we can activate mTOR again. And if you were to consume a meal 3.5 to 4 hours after that again, which may or may not work for you, it would work for me because I like to eat late at night. But if you're a person that can't do this, then eating once after is fine. But we can, if we do this correctly, and if we were to train at, say, 7, 8 a.m. in the morning, that's one mTOR activation. If we were to wait then until 12, 1 p.m., we could eat a bolus of protein, which would elicit another mTOR response. If we were to wait until 3 to 4, we could elicit another. And again, 7, 8, 9-ish, we could elicit another response. So to maximize our muscle building state, if we were to follow that protocol, we would activate mTOR 4 times in one day, which is the maximum. Beyond this is a case of diminishing returns, and then we throw out the AMPK to mTOR balance. So we want to do this carefully, and we don't want to overexpress mTOR through 5 activations, for example, which is typically what happens when we're on a carb life. So we're in this constant activation of mTOR, and it's activated via IGF-1. So for me, it's almost a wasted mTOR activation if we consume food straight after. It doesn't mean that you can't, but I would say if you are eating straight from training, make sure that you do consume a meal 4 hours after to elicit a further response.
That's a great answer as always, Richard. That's fantastic. Got 3 or 4 minutes to go. By the way, if you've got labs and you want to send them to me and you want to book a consultation, I am a qualified phlebotomist and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, let's get into the last question and a little bit of some shocking news from the American Diabetic Association. I'm lifting the lid on exclusively for the people tonight. You're going to hear it here first. Right, so here we go. Hi, are there any health conditions when you should quit carnivore? For instance, gallbladder pains, where doctors say no fat. Right. Well, you see, the thing is, right, let's take that one example about the gallbladder. Or should we talk about the American Diabetes Association? No, we'll talk about the gallbladder first. But anyway, right. We've just got somebody coming in late. So, yeah, if you have your gallbladder removed, what happens? Do you still produce bile? Yes, you do. Is it concentrated like it was in the gallbladder? No, it's a continuous flow. That's all it is. So what happens is the bile comes through the common bile duct and goes straight into the small intestine. It's not straight, but, goes into the small intestine. That's where it will actually end up. Now, this is why some people, when they first come to this way of eating, there is a little bit of a problem, because instead of that gallbladder contracting and squeezing and making it nice and thick, the bile, it's actually more fluid and it flows through the common bile duct. That's it. Now, the amazing thing about the liver, two things actually, just a little offshoot. I'm doing a Richard here. 70% of the liver can be destroyed and it can then regrow. 70% of it can be destroyed, which is why you can get this reversal. It's amazing. It also is amazing that when you take the gallbladder out, the common bile duct becomes like a surrogate gallbladder and actually adapts to actually hold a little bit of bile. So you do adapt. That's what I would say. So is there any health conditions where you should quit carnivore? The only one I can think of is the alpha-gal tick, which is a tick bite that makes you allergic to certain proteins in red meat. And I do have a couple of people on my YouTube channel, success stories, where that did stop them for a bit, but they were able to come back to it after about 9 to I think the other one was 12 months. And they went into what they called fish and fowl. They did fish and chicken and duck and all this sort of stuff, and they were able to be carnivore. So, yeah. Did you want to add anything to that, Richard?
Yeah, takeaways. And I don't mean an Indian meal takeaway or the takeaways is, look, you can maintain the lifestyle, just reduce the amount of fat that you're consuming. This is the best way to upregulate these processes. Maybe consume more meals. You quite often hear within the arena that people, will implement OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, or 2 MAD. I find that for women in general, 2 to 3 meals a day works best anyway, but consume less food over longer periods of time with lower fat and just allow that adaptation process, as Steve mentioned, in order to be upregulated. I've worked with many people with severe gallbladder problems, even gallbladders removed, who have managed to maintain the lifestyle once they've made these changes. So just lower the amount of fat that you're consuming and space the meals out. So eat them in smaller portions and more regular, however many you need, just to alleviate that pain. But I'm pretty certain if you do implement those things, then these issues will begin to get better. And keep us updated, because it's all well and good giving advice, but we like to get this information back. For the regular listener that joins us on Monday, because we're live here also tomorrow at 8 p.m. every Monday. The regular listener will know that they come back and they will say that the information we've given has either worked or not, and then we can work back and forth to make sure that we come to a solution. And quite often, Steve, we've had issues go on for weeks and weeks where things haven't worked, and suddenly, that switch has flicked and everything has fallen into place. So consistency is key. Don't give up, because it is worth it once you can sort those issues and keep moving forward.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. Gaza has put a question in there. Gaza, you're a long-time member, and you know that you can do tomorrow's live question and answer at 8 p.m. in the UK. If you missed the beginning of this, there's a playback. It's going to be on in a couple of days, just to talk about the American Diabetes Association. If you think that you're being told the right information, and I will be revealing this on Dr. Ab's podcast. He's kindly invited both Richard and myself to his studio in London to record it. But just to give you a little heads up, I'll be talking about the fact that the American Diabetes Association admit that diabetes is a problem with carbohydrate intolerance and toxicity. But because It's difficult to get people to follow a new way of eating. This is actually in writing, by the way, that they advise the doctors to continue to recommend 45% carbohydrate intake because at least that way the patients will be listening to the doctor. They actually have put that in writing. Yes. So just think on that. That's actually in writing. That the only reason they're doing it is because that means the doctor's advice will be followed. And I think that's atrocious, personally. Anyway, and I can see from Richard's face, he didn't know that. And it's not common knowledge, but it will be. I'll make sure of it. So thank you, everyone who joined tonight. Sorry if we sounded a bit rushed, but that's because we have been. And hopefully see you on Mondays live or around on the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. See you all tomorrow, hopefully.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support means the absolute world to me, and if you're enjoying this show, I've got a small favour to ask you. I'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a supporter and make a small monthly donation. Your contribution will really help to improve the show. I'll be able to improve the software, maybe put a few more episodes out, and do many things that I'm hoping to do in the future. Do them a lot quicker. So, it's a small monthly contribution. You can cancel at any time, and the link is in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening.